Speaking of funny shit, Pelosi being asked if her husband ever insider traded today was literally the same thing as this classic Chappelle sketch.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he's received from you?
What are you saying?
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No, absolutely not. Okay, thank you.
What, oil? You want the oil? What? You want that oil? What? She seized after this, by the way. Wouldn't leave her office, according to the AP. Yeah, fuck her. She sucks. Matt Walsh is what a Wojak looks like in real life. He's a guy who posts theocratic fascist, women's studies scholar, biologist. He has no credentials whatsoever. The only thing that he has a credential of is being a theocratic fascist. And he's been posting nonstop. He's the perfect quintessential example of what a right-winger is. He is 100% what a right-winger is. He's the fullest explanation of a right-winger. Brain dead. Absolutely brain dead. Has nothing of value to say. I'll say that again. Conservatives have nothing of value to say. This is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. Was he posted this? Let me see if I can open another tab. Let me open this in another tab. And I just want to go through it. And then we're going to watch him talk about sex. So you're in for a real treat today. We're going to be roasting Matt Walsh, worthless loser. He tweeted this, and it got 41,000 likes. 41,000 likes. Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. Remember when they spent years telling us to panic over the hole in the ozone layer and then suddenly just stopped talking about it and nobody ever mentioned it, the ozone layer again? This was also back during the time when they scared school children into believing that acid rain was a real and urgent threat. Now, you're probably screaming right now, unless you're a conservative and you have a brain of a flea. But just so you know, the ozone layer is not a problem anymore because we stopped using the chemicals that were destroying it. Specifically, Derek Thompson here from the has a response that is very pithy. So let's just go to what Derek says, and then I'll elaborate. What happened is scientists discovered that chlorofluorocarbons were bad for the ozone. You probably learned that in elementary school science if you're under the age of 40. Countries believed them. The Montreal Protocol was signed, and CFC use fell by 99.7%, leading to the stabilization of the ozone layer, perhaps the greatest example of global cooperation in history. In other words, the ozone layer started to get shredded. We said, wow, that's bad. We developed more expensive alternatives for CFCs, and we stopped using CFCs. And then those more expensive alternatives, they reduced in price over time, and now we have alternative refrigerants, and you don't even fucking know the difference. And the ozone layer is slowly repaired. Ozone is largely generated in our atmosphere by lightning strikes. Okay? So over time, the ozone layer is repaired. Is the ozone layer completely repaired? No, it's not. There's still a hole. But it's repairing and getting better every year because we're not using CFCs anymore. We used regulation and global governance to solve a problem. And the only effect was a slight increase in the price of refrigeration that has since declined. Matt Walsh is fucking brain dead. Also, the other thing he mentioned, just so we could talk about it quickly, acid rain is when you have sulfur compounds being released from typically coal combustion. Sulfur dioxide, namely. Also, I believe it calls it as from diesel. So sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, typically diesel engines and coal fire, right? Coal fire power plants, right? So what do? We added scrubbers. We added environmental regulations. And we required a reduction in the emission of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide. Da 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 da! Regulation! And specifically, if you want to know what happened in the United States, we passed the Acid Deposition Act, which started something known as the National Acidic Precipitation Assessment Program. So Congress passed a law that monitored and regulated it. And in 1990, the U.S. Congress passed amendments to the Clean Air Act, specifically regulating sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, targeting power plants. Again, regulations were passed. Scientists studied. They found the outcomes. They passed regulation. And specifically, what's funny is sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide were placed under a cap and trade program. Oh, we did cap and trade for that. That's the thing that Joe Manchin was shooting for carbon.
Solidarity forever.
So we've already seen what solved the ozone layer, what largely reduced the problem of acid rain. Government regulation, law, science. This dumb fuck, we solved the problem, proving his entire philosophy wrong, and he's so stupid and in such a bubble, he doesn't even know that we solved it using methods that he says doesn't work. Because when they do work, conservatives don't look at the evidence. This is the ultimate example of being a complete bubble boy and a complete dumb fuck. Hi, Mike, chemist here. Hydrogen fuel is the only option that will completely cut out acid rain risks. The main issue is that countries don't have the ability to produce clean oil without nitrogen and sulfur and just burn whatever they get. Oh yeah, I mean, it still exists, but it's been heavily reduced. When you solve problems, conservatives use your solving of it as proof it was a hoax, and your solution was just about desire for and love of hurting business. Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Fancy Pants, for this sub as well. Incredibly small brains. This is super depressing, dude. You fix shit, and then the response to it is, well, I guess it never was a problem then. That's why conservatives should be censored. Because they're lying sacks of shit. I don't know what to tell you. Censor conservatives. Deplatform conservatives. Matt Walsh should not be allowed to speak. Okay, that was a joke, but people are going to take it as serious. Remember when they spent years telling us we needed to clean horseshit from our city streets and then suddenly just stopped talking about it and nobody ever mentioned the horseshit in our city streets again? Yeah. Censor conservatives. That's a joke, chat. That's a joke. And now we're going to talk about this dipshit once again. And this one's truly amazing. This one will really get you going because this shows you exactly the people that are in power. And the more they get, the more power they get, the worse things are, and the more they're going to blame you. You powerless nobodies. Why is nobody talking about the bubonic plague anymore? I guess smallpox wasn't really a big disease. This is Matt Walsh. So whenever you read his tweets, read it in this voice.
If you are not in a position where you feel like you're able to, you should conceive a child. If conceiving a child would be disastrous for you, you believe, then do not participate in activities that literally billions of times in the past have resulted in the conception of a child. If reproduction, maybe I'll phrase it this way, because I really want to make it very simple for these people. They have difficulty understanding complex concepts. So I'm going to dumb it down as much as possible. If
the difference between a conservative and a leftist is that I listen to what he says directly. I respond to what he says directly and rip it apart. He has to invent straw people to debate with because a person with a pulse could easily see through it who wasn't in the conservative bubble. Just brain dead. Continue, Matt.
Reproduction would be a disaster for you, you believe. Then do not participate in the Reproductive Act.
All right, so that is Matt Walsh, host of the Daily Walsh.
All I could say is Matt Walsh. Let's just watch more of the Matt Walsh. Hold on, let me see if I can get the video. I think this is the video. It takes a second to load on Mediaite. There it is.
If you are not in a position where you feel like you're able to, you should conceive a child. If have difficulty understanding complex, if reproduction would be a disaster for you, you believe, then do not participate in the Reproductive Act. That's all. If you're able to reproduce and yet reproduction would be a catastrophe, then do not participate in the Reproductive Act. Because if you are able to reproduce, no matter what else you do, you can make it the quote unquote safest kind of sex you want. There's always still going to be a chance that you reproduce. And if that chance would be like plunging off of a cliff level of catastrophe in your life, then don't participate in the act.
So when he says he's a theocratic fascist, he's honest. The thing is, even in the papal states, when literally large sections of central Italy were directly ruled by the Pope as also temporal leader. I don't, if you may not know this, Chad, if you're not big into the history, but the Pope physically controlled as king large sections of central Italy all the way till 1865. You may not have known that. The Pope stopped being like a ruler of people in 1865. Up until that point, there were millions of people millions of people who lived under the direct rule of the Pope. And in the Papal States, they understood people are going to have sex outside of marriage. He's got a less realistic idea of how sex works than 17th century popes. Legitimately brain dead. Secondly, notice how this is about making women second-class citizens. Because if you're a guy and you shoot your cum into someone, you don't have to go through the physical burden of carrying the fetus. And then you got to prove that the guy is the father, right? For him, that's fine. Go off. Now, in the Bible, it says if you spill your seed, you're committing an offense. I don't see any regulation coming. Like, if these guys were really biblically consistent, they would be talking about banning masturbation. They would be talking directly about banning pornography. If you want to live a biblical life, Matt, why aren't you campaigning to ban porn? Why aren't you campaigning to ban video games? Why aren't you campaigning to ban movies? The reason why they're not is because they know it would be unpopular. They're just political scum. They don't have the courage of their convictions. They're little cowards who are trying to trick you and put women into a position of second-class status. And then maybe in the future, they're going to come after all those things. I can tell you right now that having sex for non-reproductive purposes is fucking normal. Even, again, theocratic fascists should know this. The Catholic Church understands that not every time you have sex, it's going to result in conception. They even encourage people to use what they call natural forms of birth control, namely coitus interruptus and what they call the rhythm method, which is a woman tracks her ovulation cycle and doesn't have sex when she's fertile. But you're still having sex for pleasure within your marriage. These people have less sexual understanding of human beings than fucking weird celibates in the Catholic Church. What a freak. What a freak. So this is the society they want to live in. A society where you can't have sex unless you want to have a kid. You have 5 kids already? Bad luck for you. You can't afford to take care of them? They'll tell you, fuck you, stop having kids. You shouldn't have had kids. You shouldn't have gotten married and had sex with your husband or wife. That's how fucking weird these fuckers are. Do you really want to live in that hell world? Jesus Christ. I can't believe even a single person. See, here's the thing about conservatism. It has to operate on hypocrisy. They have to operate on hypocrisy. Because if they don't, they think rules are, nobody actually follows the rules, but it's, do you have the power not to follow them? Are you in the elect? Are you up far enough in the hierarchy that you can afford not to follow the rules? Well, if you can't afford not to follow the rules, you better follow the rules. The rules are there to bind you and protect me. That's conservatives. That's why every pro-life politician has an abortion with a mistress somewhere in their history. Matt Walsh says we're not beasts, so we should have sex for pleasure. That's stupid because beasts have sex almost exclusively for procreation and not pleasure. He's the dumbest of the dumb fascists. Animals have sex because it's an instinctual compulsion. And yes, they do get pleasure from it, but they're unthinking, unreasoning. That's what makes them an animal and not sentient. You fucking worthless dipshit. Again, behind Jewish scholars of 5,000 years ago. Matt Walsh is brain dead. Legitimately stupid. It's incredible to me about conservatives is they don't even read their own shit. That's how dumb they are. They don't even read their own shit. Do you think Matt Walsh has read Oakeshott? Do you think Matt Walsh has read David Hume? Do you think Matt Walsh has done even the most basic, pathetic, conservative understand? Do you think he understands even a little bit about conservative thought? He's an idiot. And this is one of the most popular fucking conservatives on the internet. Incredible. Why is he popular? Huge oil money is poured into it because these guys are useful idiots for oligarchs.
That's Praxis.
Incredible how small his brain is.
Control yourself. Right? We're human beings. We should be able to exercise some self-control. Right? We're not beasts in the jungle that are unable to control are compulsions. At least we shouldn't be. One of the defining features of human beings, one of the things that's supposed to set us apart from beasts, is that we are able to have a compulsion to do something, we want to do something, and yet we choose not to do it. If you are not in a position where
Now, chat, I can say you right now that is the essence of conservatism in politics in a nutshell. It should sound to you incredibly stupid on its face, but if you're one of these people that doesn't think a lot about politics before watching this, I'm going to talk to you directly. That is the opposite of how you should run a society. Society should be designed so that you are already in a position to make choices that are good for you. We shouldn't be setting up traps for people to fall into. Then we can go, fuck that guy. Society shouldn't be, you better not make that mistake or your life is ruined, when it's something as normal as, feeling sexual desire, which is an innate part of being a living being. Matt Walsh wants to set up a society where if your natural compulsions are followed, you will be destroyed. That sound like a smart society to you? Meanwhile, what's the alternative? The alternative is consenting adults can use medical science to plan their reproduction. And they'll have children when they are financially, emotionally, and psychologically ready to be a parent. So we have a society where, and Matt Walsh's society, there's no bones about it. People will not listen to Matt Walsh in mass. That's insane. So there's going to be millions of people that are having children, having sex, because that's their natural compulsion. That's what they were set up to do as human beings. And Matt Walsh is going to throw those people into the dumpster, and the millions of children he's going to leave on the streets or in poverty because your parents didn't exercise sufficient self-control. And then when Matt Walsh's family has sex, because every human being who has those urges wants to do it and will, Matt's going to fly them over to Paris for their cosmopolitan abortion. These rules are meant to not be followable. That is insane. That is truly Kafkaesque. That is truly a society of hell where it's set up so that everyday, normal, well-adjusted people are going to break the rules and be punished. That's psycho shit. Can you imagine Matt Walsh saying, don't eat food for pleasure, only eat food for sustenance, only eat thin gruel? Matt, are you going to ban spices? I mean, you're white enough, so maybe you will. But food is only for sustenance and energy. You should not be getting any pleasure from taste. That's depraved. That's the level of mentality you're on. That's insane. And chat, this is the thing about conservatives. They're bad at sex. We know that. That's why they have so much psychosexual hangups. When you never please your partner, when you are physically incapable of bringing them to the conclusion, you're going to want to control everybody else. I mean, Ben Shapiro had a public argument about how women cannot get wet pussies. The intellectual superstar of the right online argued that women can't get wet. And here, chat, it's science. It's fucking science, man. Women have better sex under socialism. This is just scientific fact. A new book by Kristen Godsey, an anthropologist at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. You know it's good because it's from Pennsylvania. This is what Pennsylvanians, we provide you the important knowledge. Kristen from Pennsylvania says, women have better sex under socialism. A survey of East and West Germans after reunification in 1990 found that Eastern women, the socialist side of Germany during the Cold War, had twice as many orgasms as Western women. When Germans are having way more orgasms, you know the system is better. If, she argues, you build a society that supports women and doesn't punish them for having children or devalue their labor, it turns out they'll be happier and have better sex.
That's praxis.
Period. Dot. That's the facts, Jack. And when guys like this represent conservatism, you know their partners ain't getting big O. You stand East Germany? I stand it over West Germany. West Germany, you mean the Nazis were just immediately put back in power? All right. Conservatives and incels have an insane boner for rigid rules of behavior. Yeah, it's weird. Because it's not just weird. It makes sense. It's called being insecure. You understand that, right, chat? They're profoundly insecure. So That's why they're so obsessed with the concept of a sexual marketplace and alpha males. Because they know they're not alpha males. So they create this entire mind palace about how sexuality works. Just so they can tell themselves they're not alpha. And if they want to have and for women's own good, they have to restrict women's choices. That's why they are the way they are. Because they know they don't measure up. And it's sad. It's really sad to see. There's leftist incels too. Of course there is. But this sums up how conservatives feel about sexuality. Trouble conservative women go through. In the wake of the truly misguided Hobby Lobby decision, which endowed a legal entity with the right to discriminate against working women of childbearing age via newly discovered corporate religious freedom, I was reminded that puritanical America is alive and on Twitter when I found in my mentions feed where a lot of people, some women, mostly men, who felt like they wanted to offer the following advice: an aspirin between your knees is great birth control and affordable. Translation: these Hobby Lobby women shouldn't need birth control because they shouldn't be having sex. Some try to sound more fiscally conservative and say, I don't care what they do as long as I don't have to pay for it. Translation: they shouldn't be having sex. Women and their liberal brethren are upset because a billionaire employer gets to dictate what medications their female workers have to pay for out of pocket. But to the right, it's rarely missed opportunity to relitigate the 20th century's gradual acceptance of women first as voters, then as unregulated private citizens, and then as equal participants in recreational sex. Not just being sexy, not as sexual objects, and just as a whore or virginal mother constructs, but as actual women being free to partake in their natural ability to desire and enjoy intercourse, and then not be an outcast. Some have pointed out that if you are truly against abortion, you should be for what counters the need for abortion: reliable, cheap, and widely available birth control. This assumes wrongly that pro-life women is really about life. Pro-life movement, rather. When it comes to children, their concern stops at birth, and when it comes to women, their finger-wagging starts at sex. A few years ago, for a story, I went undercover at a crisis pregnancy center, a fake clinic offering no healthcare services and misleading medical advice. Their guidebook, called the Pearson Manual, declares they're battling Satan. And to them, Satan is a girl who wants to kill her baby. And therefore, she doesn't deserve real information. Because she's Satan. The only way to not get pregnant, they said, was to not have sex. One pamphlet read, true love protects 100% of the time, which is far from being medically sound. CPCs are billed as solely anti-abortion. They're firstly anti-fornication. That's it, chat. No sex outside of marriage. And if you're a married woman, why do you need to control your reproduction? Be barefooted pregnant at home. That is actually what conservatives are trying to build. You may hear that and go, Mike, that's batshit crazy. That's from 70, 80 years ago. What do you mean, man? That's what the conservative 20% are trying to enact. And they control 6 members of the Supreme Court. You may think it's crazy, but that's what's coming down the pike. And that's what Roe v. Wade being overturned was supposed to show you, chat. And yet, Democrats are gambling with this. The first thing that comes up on Google in my area is a crisis pregnancy center. Yeah, you have to look for Planned Parenthood only. It's a little fun to watch Republicans try to be more libertarian. It's not a great fit. Republicans like liberty when it's something they agree with, like oil and gas company subsidies. Not so much for things they don't agree with, like women having sex without consequences, and an actual fear. Conservative Christians fear women having sex freely will erode society. This is what incels talk about constantly. They believe that women having sex, that women freely controlling their own vaginas and that making their own sexual choices is going to undermine society. Specifically, they talk about single motherhood as a problem. But if abortion is available, if contraceptives are free and easy to access, single motherhood goes down. So they'll talk about how we need to control women's sex by attacking the social problem of single motherhood, namely, like slowly the likelihood of worse sociological outcomes for children born to single parent families, right? Which makes sense because why? We're a capitalist society. If you have 2 parents earning an income or the potential to earn an income, you're probably going to do better than a child who doesn't have 2 parents. Duh! It has nothing to do with marriage. It has to do with resources. More resources you have, the better you're going to do. Duh! Instead, death is going up, sterility is going up, crime is going up. We're such a backwards country. Why is sterility going up? Because we have unregulated chemical companies dumping shit into the air and water and food supply, and we don't even know what it does. We know there's an endocrine issue going on in our society. Maybe it has to do with microplastics. Maybe it has to do with other chemicals that are untested. The conservatives are against finding out. PFAS, okay. Sex with a condom, bad.
Yes, sir. I think we have to go now. One more, he said. Yes, sir.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he's received from you?
What are you saying?
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No, absolutely not. Okay, thank you.
Bullshit.
Yes, sir. I think we have
Bullshit. Nancy Pelosi is fucking evil. She's doing some major warmongering against Russia, and it is so dangerous, man. She's attacking Biden because he's not enough of a war hawk. Incredible. San Francisco Warhawks. Don't you just love it, chat? A few years ago for a story, I went undercover at a crisis pregnancy center. Okay, it's a little, okay. Conservative Christians fear women having sex freely will erode society. It's somehow going to hurt the country if our women folk act like men in regards to their libido. To them, female sexuality is a matter of national security. Conservatives are against equal rights for women. Women are different, they argue, and they need to be protected. They're pro-woman, sure, as long as said woman is not sexually liberated, i.e. a slut. And that is what is going on in the minds of some of the jurists at the Supreme Court. Case in point, in the 2011 decision, Snyder versus Phillips, which hinged on Fred Phillips of God Hates fame, First Amendment right to picket funerals for dead Marines, the court ruled 8-1 in Phillips' favor. Justice Alito wrote the dissent, our profound national commitment to free and open debate is not a license for the vicious and verbal assault that occurred in this case. In order to have a society in which public issues can be openly and vigorously debated, it's not necessary to allow the brutalization of innocent victims. And in last week's McCullough versus Coakley, the buffer zone law at abortion clinics, establishments that have been repeatedly bombed, shot, and otherwise terrorized by protesters, how did Alito vote when it came to vicious verbal assault on loose women? Alito thinks that that's protected speech. The decision was unanimously in favor of the harassers. The coinage of the war on women denotes planning on the part of the right wing. It suggests some kind of coordination and agenda. I don't think that's what we have here. I think what we're seeing is a visceral knee-jerk, a deeply irrational prejudice against female sexuality. I mean, I think her conclusion is wrong, but I think it's about imposing a right-wing theocratic dictatorship. That's it. That's it. How can people work in the pharmaceutical field not own any stock related to pharmaceuticals or even keep a word or they go to jail? But politicians do this all the time. It's so corrupt because the law doesn't apply to politicians. Is the answer. That's the answer. Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap.